What's truly hilarious is that there is evidence of a highly developed extraterrestrial civilization, be able to move faster than light, antimatter weapons as well as ideal. The universal translators determined that their greatest accomplishment would be turning the galaxy into their own safari. Really, Park, that's what you do? You start a galactic battle with all that technology and extreme kind of large game hunting. The Cathals undoubtedly believe that when standing in 8 feet tall on average and iridescent color-changing scales that looked like oil on retractable claws and water that may cut through the strengthened steel, they were their homeworld's top predators, but seemingly controlling one planet was insufficient for these overachievers. No, lizards have to demonstrate their greatness by pursuing all sentient being species they might discover. Look at us, utilizing our sophisticated quantum phase cloaking. Aren't we using our plasma weapons and devices? Simply the most advanced items since sliced. Their hunting preserves were xenomorphs' piece of art. I'll give them the full terraforming into lethal playgrounds, each designed to offer IDE. Is the ideal task for their prestigious hunting parties. May only envision the most breathtaking scenery you've ever seen. Observed, then include plants that consume flesh, automatic defensive mechanisms, and environmental risks that might make Australia appear to be a pet zoo. They were dubbed the Proven Grounds by Thal, labeled them Hell, recalling my initial peak of their creations. I was, at the time, Commander Alina Ray led an information about security in the colony world of New Montana, which is a truly lovely place. Twin moons over the rolling plains are ideal for, if you're interested, you can raise space cattle, whereas the kin of item we believe to be the largest, the local wildlife, would pose a threat. Or perhaps some pirates were mistaken, so terribly incorrect. They arrived while our harvest festival, as they naturally revealed to the world that you have caused a worldwide pandemic. Why would you hunt people when you can wait? Be attentive and disorganized, enabling them to congregate in one location and receive consumed on grain that had fermented. The first, our communications were cut out by a plasma bolt, a tram that came from outer space, and the second cut off by a plasma bolt. Burn the shadows, plucking and scaled figures moving. I made it through one by one because I was tactically astute and paranoid, formal phrase, but to be honest, I was the plot among the colony's inhabitants. Theorists who demanded that secret bunkers and keeping the old-fashioned radio operational. It's odd, because having paranoia isn't extremely suspicious when there are aliens trying to steal you from my secret observation post. I observed them studying. They discovered their patterns, and the Theatal's protocols weren't merely, they were hunting us and gathering us, one by one. A kill was noted, scored, and included in their standings in the main tournament. They even featured pundits, for heaven's sake. Boisterous image of a sporting event, but you receive touchdown replays in place of a slow-motion video, shows people getting, Grand Hunter has been hunted down. Using the traditional plasma net, the Vex Thor the hunt starts technique, you have a wonderful form. The neurological system of the prey becomes active. Before collapsing, it was simply amazing. Item will receive a high rating from the judges. I was in that bunker for 3 days, record everything after the rescue. When ships eventually arrived, they discovered me, encircled by datapads that contained notes about hunting methods used by Cethal, requirements for weapons, and social hierarchy that the brass looked at once my intel and moved me right away to special. I partially go by ghost now for operations, since I'm deemed legally dead by colony records, but primarily due to the fact that I've turned into a haunting apparition. Oh, at the hunting grounds of Cow's Thull, obtaining information and sometimes making certain that some of their victims inexplicably vanishes before they can claim their awards. However, merely observing is no longer sufficient, not after knowing. Oh, after what I've witnessed, there were dozens, including that new Montana, of human settlements utilized for their questionable allegories. The Cthulhu believes they're the sick game galaxy's best hunters. Chuckle darkly, you haven't seen, honey, anything as of yet. As you were occupied while engaging in your small games, you ignored the sometimes most crucial hunting rule. The prey becomes adept at hunting back, and I am here's an expert tip for an exceptionally good student. If you intend to sneak up on an extraterrestrial, don't enter the hunting guild looking like a human. I mean, that ought to be clear. Thankfully, the Cal weren't the only advanced species in existence. A race of shapeshifters known as Morphans would avoid being noticed by the KTH and were more than willing to assist when I clarified. All I needed was a little bit of DNA, a few million credits, and samples don't inquire as to where special operations obtain such money. So I walked confidently inside the opulent hunting lodge on Thal Prime KRA, putting on the borrowed shape of a noble centurion, is all crystalline, appendages and light-filled floating orbs. The receptionist is really arrogant, cray-looking, Thal with a gold tip S. Scales hardly gave my credentials a glance. Lady Zixa, before you let me in, thank you for showing interest in our noble. She managed to sound both sporty and submissive all at once. When your reputation for having unusual preferences comes before you, honey, you're clueless. The lodge was just what you would expect from a group of wealthy criminals. Trophy, with an excessive amount of time on their hands, Miles extended the walls to show conserved specimens from all throughout the room. I saw at least 3 humans in the galaxy, heads that have been mounted and kept flawlessly. I twitched my fingers like a prized deer toward the direction of the hidden plasma dagger in my crystalline shape. But I quickly maintained my composure. I assured them. Lady Zix's voice boomed in silence, reverberated throughout the huge hall, welcoming greetings. We hardly ever have centurions in our organization, and he was Grand Hunter. Vexthor is almost standing. He is 10 feet tall, and his scale fluctuates between purple and midnight blue and deep purple. He cut a remarkable cybernetic figure. His joints gleamed with improvements, and cape composed of what appeared to be fading behind him. Andromedan silk swirled in all directions. His neck hung a necklace of assorted teeth. I've counted 3 of his most valuable kills. Ground Hunter. I am one of the human Murs bowed with carefully thought out respect. You have a wonderful reputation. I just had to let me give you the spectacular trip. We recently put in some amazing new technologies in our latest preserve. The hours that followed were at the same time the most instructive, and Vexthor made me feel sick to my stomach. By means of their investigation and advancement, labs showcased their most recent hunting, technology with a childlike zest, with fresh gadgets that he said were supporting what appeared to be a basic DART, our most recent NIDL. They lodge in innovation neuro-Q-rot trackers, the neurological system of the prey, enabling us to track their actual fear reactions. Omant, it gives a completely different perspective on what I heard because I found the score system fascinating. While mentally listing methods to disable them, although some prey will undoubtedly successfully get rid of them, Vexthor laughs to like the sound of rocks in a bin. Impossible. Once embedded, they can only be turned off by our knowledgeable advisor. See this free modulator here for equipment? I appreciate you sharing that knowledge. The tour went on because of the overconfident lizard via their armory, where I discovered regarding the shortcomings in their purported cloaking technology was thrown off balance by certain UV frequencies and their instruction facilities, where I learned about the anti-gravity forces of the perfect cloaking technology was thrown off by certain UV frequencies and their instruction facilities, where I learned about their perpetude. Aim first servers near the joint for the knees. But the true treasure trove arrived when Vex Thor left a lasting impression. I was invited by my eager interest to see their enormous planning room. Infiltration holographic maps showed their present position and potential hunting areas, such as 12. Well, they had not yet visited any human colonies, believed that people were especially fascinated by the explanation of pre-Vextor displaying through biological scans. Although they're not the fastest or strongest, they have an intriguing propensity to be unpredictable, huh? I spoke in a neutral tone even as I committed the settlement to memory, and I wrote in the thought I would prevail. Believe me, I have experienced battles but never in such a fashion before. Or run away in predictable ways. People, however, he shook his head in confusion. Wow, we once positioned a woman in a dead-end canyon rather than giving up. While attempting to engage in combat, she caught our bait, extremely poisonous beast, that through it confronts the spines during our hunting party. Almost removed, Grand Hunter Z's vehicle's eye was wholly nonsensical, but remarkably successful. I recalled women that I had previously trained, naturally. Before Vextor carried on, with his voice growing sultry with delight, we still ultimately caught her. Her skull serves as a beautiful focal point. In The Thing is my own collection. Concerning predators such as the Cathul, they're so certain of their superiority that they didn't pause to consider whether their prey may be engaging in a more complex game than they. Never thought that people with our long tradition of greater, stronger hunts of animals may comprehend something essential to being an underdog. They never questioned if we might be gaining knowledge from each experience and adjusting and changing as I walked out of the lodge that evening. In my borrowed crystalline form, I transferred the setting sun's reflection, a data packet that is highly encrypted, to everything I'd studied about special operations technologies, the shortcomings of a crowded and critically expensive discipline. I had discovered their pride would be theirs. Demise due to Grand Hunter Vextor had unintentionally provided me with their own scoring system and weapon, and I was going to transform their small game into the hunt with something they didn't anticipate. Where the individuals were being graded, I'm a pretty critical judge, honey. Have you ever witnessed your own species being hunted while feigning pleasure? It's not an experience I'd like to share. Suggest, however, I was in my correspondence, standing in a crystalline centurion disguise aboard Vextor's observation deck, personal hunting craft, attempting to create sounds of gratitude as his crew followed. A party of colonists walking through the woods of fresh Arcadia observes that they have divided into tablets. Vextor comments on 3 groups, scales that are teeming with anticipation. They believe they saw a spectacle. Do not divide our forces. You hearty one, lizard. They are preparing a triple ambush. I can tell you're falling for it. These strategies weren't only arbitrary. The colonists were likely former military personnel. A portion of the resistance cells that I had assisted in exploring the ship's advanced. I could see the monitoring systems setting up simple but efficient traps. Punji pits with native plants growing over them, tripwires attached to makeshift explosives. Locations are ideal for... Should we use crossfire to deploy the Neurot? Vex Thor was questioned by Tracker's second-in-command, a repulsive work called Vex Thor Purd. Harsh, not yet. Let's see their actions, First Lady HFY. Should observe how erratic they are. You have no concept of what creatures can be behind them. The hunt went just as I pictured it. The K-Ra Thol hunting party was anticipated. It began by picking up 2 smaller destroyers, one of which was a large warship, the other a fleet cruiser. At which point I pretended to be enthralled as I made my move via the tracking of their ship. These sensor arrays technology is outstanding. I owe you that places my crystalline, bulging Pefe pages. The control panel's appendage, the resolution is amazing. What they failed to observe was the tiny quantum transmitters that I worked, thanks to special operations, they left behind. Every member of the RD department is able to transmit the position of the ship across subspace was destroyed by the initial blast. The second hunter produced enough. 3 colonists were confused and slipped piecemeal within a network of secret tunnels, the CRA. With glee, Fal was inconsolable. The difficult prey, then something happened. A young man who was mistakenly one of the colonists. He broke from barely out of his teens, playing rather than withdrawing more into the network tunnel. He attempted to save a brave, fallen comrade, but the child was foolish, had little chance against the Neurot of Vex Thor trackers. I had to decide whether to keep, screw it, my cover or save the kid. I yelled while feigning to trip in opposition to the weapons control panel. How very awkward behavior on my part. The ship's unintentionally locking the targeting system onto a rock formation in the area. The ensuing explosion resulted in a landslide that coincidentally blocked KTH's line of view of Vex Thor. A young colonist, his prosthetic eyes snapped around his head wearing, as it concentrated on, he spoke slowly, a mean, unfortunate accident, examining my crystallized state with, yes, I said, with newfound intensity, the configuration keeping up my distant Centaurian attitude. I might want to hold off on your hunt for inexpensive appetite. His scales changed to one of intense suspicion, purple. I almost believed he had pierced my disguise. But he chuckled. After that awful grinding noise once more. Your passion makes you reckless, lady. Zixia, but nevertheless, we have additional prey to follow the hunt for an additional 3 hours. The majority of colonists escaped via the network tunnel, despite the fact that the crows considered it an achievement since they had succeeded. I had to stand there nodding in captured 2, gratefully as they spoke about their awards. But I had achieved my mission. Each of the main ships in their My Quantum was now carried by the hunting fleet trackers. But more significantly, I had verified that the creatures were vital in one way. Therefore, I was persuaded of their supremacy, that they would overlook blatant suspicion, conduct that was enclosed in a rich enough parcel as I got ready to depart. I was brought aside by Vex Thor. You know, lady, he rumbled, there's something, Zixayaya, something familiar about you that's unusual. Felt a jolt in my borrowed heart, but maintained my tone of voice. How fascinating. Maybe we've already met at some other hunting display. Perhaps as well. Once more, the cybernetic eye term. Will you be coming to the Great Hunt with us next month? We have found a colony of hopeful humans. I bowed deeply. I would not miss it if I concealed my expression, or every planet in the galaxy, since you scale. That's where it all stops. Where the hunters are coated bastard. As my shuttle left, I became the hunted. I could still feel the gaze of Vex Thor on me. He felt that something wasn't right, but his pride prevented him from accepting that Prey may have made this astute error. You know what's hilarious about his most recent era? Rather than observing several apex predators fall into a clear trap while observing them, hurry into it while praising themselves for their cleverness of the information that was disclosed regarding the spread of the covert human military colony through the hunting rings of Seathal. Such as, they whispered to the elite soldiers in the wildfire, "The ultimate target I might target is special forces." Have taken out a few classified materials regarding the now-defunct Spartan program on Earth to incorporate some SP into the story's hook line, and the big hunts of sinker darlings. The lodge was bustling with adventure seekers, came from all across the galaxy in their brightest boats, each vying for the honor of defeating a human super. Their enthusiasm was almost adorable. Soldier, I like seeing kids grow agitated. I heard they rigged a carnival game. Able to pierce reinforced steel, Hunter Young boasted that, according to my sources, they've been another person who was genetically enhanced. Naturally, Vex Thor asserted his right to bird in the hound, "I'll be the one leading the hunt" masterwork that he announced at the pre-hunt feast is the best evidence of KRA. The foul superiority I observed from my crystal hiding place as he revealed his newest hunting technologies and improved technique for tracking prey neurons that could allegedly forecast the movement of prey. The other hunters' OED and AAH patterns. Thanks for the demo, mate. Truly assisted us in figuring out the countermeasures they were unaware of. Was that all of their renowned technology had been researched in depth and jeopardized those quantum leads. I had planted transmitters, but they weren't. They were only tracking devices, transmitting all technical details of their hunting equipment to our R&D team for 3 weeks, setting up the colony on the new therm. Their first hint should have been their name. However, it seems that Kral hunting schools do not instruct the soldiers of ancient history. But during the meticulously established settlement, and we placed our unexpected artificial neural fingerprints to confuse their electromagnetic trackers, pulse generators that are precisely adjusted, their cloaking gadgets, frequency systems of UV strobes that would transform their valuable invisibility technology into light shows for dance. But the actual, we used their own neuronal masterpiece, reversing the programming and trackers. Now, rather than spreading fear, Prey's responses to the hunters send back overwhelming panic impulses. Hunting parties, a small sample of you may claim that their own medicine is veiled. The best resistance fighters from all dozen distinct colonies took their places in the surrounding area. Each of them was outfitted with specially made equipment intended to make use of every flaw I found throughout my life. Remember what I told them during our stay at the lodge? And the last briefing, which is now back in my they're anticipating superhuman troops. The idea that we put civilian androids engaged in combat throughout the colony, created to serve as the ideal bait for the Kate. The scans would reveal them to be authentic, individuals with heartbeats, and they would execute neuroses precisely, running, hiding, and displaying terror as anticipated till the final piece fell without them. When I started using my Centurion again, disguise, and became a member of the hunting party. Vex Thor's last planned session, the hunters were divided into teams, allocated to a certain area of the world. He rumbled his colony, Lady Zix EZII scales displaying that dubious purple. Once more, I've reserved a spot in my person destined for a winter hunt. Pleased to announce you to your certain area of life. I responded that I am honored, mentioning how His electronic gaze hovered over me for a little too long. He had a suspicion. Hunter's intuition was too strong, yet his pride prevented him from doing so. I think that the prey could plan. Something like this magnitude on the night prior to the hunt delivered one last communication in encrypted form to our GPS. Remember to allow hidden forces to reflect. Let them get arrogant because they're winning. They continue to encroach on our territory, since we'll show up then. The reason why people didn't simply survive on Earth is that we struggled to the summit of a chain of food that contained saber-toothed direwolves, and cats are smaller and weaker species before prey, and we acquired the skill of becoming predators. While observing the Cathal hunting fleet dropped in the direction of their ship's new thermop sparkling in the early morning light, I was unable to refuse to be happy tomorrow. The galaxy's the best hunters would discover a lost crucial lesson on their beloved legends. Let's play with lizards and see how crucial lesson we can teach. You are aware that every life of a predator, when they abruptly recognized that they are susceptible to that beauty, the moment when their eyes enlarge, and I got to see how their entire worldview is shattered. Observe it occur to a whole species. The KRA trial began precisely as scheduled. Hunting teams dispersed throughout the colony's cutting-edge technology, telling precisely what they desired to observe. People were running for cover in fear. Fear spiking neural markers. Everything is set up to stroke flawlessly. The hunter egos are the first indicator that nanotransformers were built aright. Lost communication followed by Team 7, then for Vex. Thor's communications failure told everyone that his scales were rippling with the initial signs of discomfort. Enhanced humans must be utilizing some, crude signal jamming. Nothing about it is primitive. I observed what we're doing to you through my crystalline disguise. The ideal hunting tactic started to dismantle the civilian androids. They abruptly stopped chasing. Running and breathing stopped dissuading any signs of near signatures. Then, in flawless head synchronization, turned 180 degrees to confront their assailants. Psychological impact was the kiss of the chef. Which demons are these screaming? Before an EMP exploded, a young hunter, his cloaking device was shorted out, leaving he was exposed, which happens when our snipers got to work. One shot, one kill, exactly as they were done to us numerous times in the past. Yet we weren't eager to accept awards, so we weren't, in fact, monsters. I had to respect our fighters for resistance. With meticulousness, they even utilized the KTH's own broadcasting song, earning points following every kill of the target destroyed. With the least amount of ammunition, 50, target moving points at a great distance, at 75 points, at several targets in a single shot. Bones of 100 points for Vex Thor's order. The group's Neil trackers were in disarray, were now transmitting signals of terror. Returned into them, the collective terror of amplified every human they had ever hunted. I concentrated as I observed the powerful hunters falter and squirm as their own technology worked against them. Yet I then determined it was time for the exciting hunting and the grand reveal method. I said, allowing my crystal conceal dissolve. However, I would rather have a more individual approach. The appearance of Vex Thor's priceless's robotic eye worked on his face, desperately attempting to comprehend was it difficult for a person to see you? As I introduced myself, I said, Commander Elena, despite the fact that you might recall me more vividly as the only survivor, you were familiar with the colony in New Montana. You are familiar with the colony in New Montana invaded when they were celebrating scale changed across all the colors in his emotional range prior to deciding on a sickly pale yellow, the age of pain. Since the beginning, we have been observing you. Each hunt, each death, each fragment of you displayed your technology with such pride. Everybody assisted us in getting ready for this event. All around us, the meticulously planned event manifested its creative power to achieve excellence. Our bodies are amazing in its own way. The commotion persisted while concealed speakers were playing recordings of Cathal Hunter's own plasma addies. Our rifles are incredibly telling their own stories. The extinctions, oh glorious form, as the hunter's own plasma is used by the human against him, a rifle of such a poetic justice item will receive a high rating from the evaluations of the remaining hunting groups. Were attempting to flee but discovered their ship's inability to respond thanks to as I had planted those quantum transmitters. Every vessel now showed a constant loop of their own video footage from hunting, displaying people being killed for sport. Your crazy Vex snarled, "Are the Pinnacle reaching for his weapon?" "No," I said. "Predators of the galaxy don't absorb unseen humans. They eliminate them. And you're the most recent in a long succession of species that made the error of assuming that people were... Did you truly believe that you were an effortless prey? Our entire history's first honey is inscribed in the predator's bones." Who undervalued the battle that the following was nearly unimpressive? All those amazing hunting technologies, cybernetic improvements, and ultimately, the last battle. Ultimately, this person with resentment and an extremely acute, he gasped. "Knife, this is not possible. Purple blood leaking from several wounds we looked at followed you, and I clarified that it was your..." You circled him, observing us like your need to have researched us like predators did. You are aware that prior to our creation of spears, when humans hunted, they would literally chase. We would pursue animals until they died, dying, wearing them down to the point when they just could no longer run. So we called it perseverance hunting. I pointed to the anarchy all around us, and this is simply hunting persistence on a galactic level. Finally, the powerful Grand Hunter Vexthor noticed a person standing nearby. He assigned his own score to his death. The system's haughty prey is being defeated by better strategy. Game over, 1,000 points. The scene was replicated around New Therapo. The hunters themselves turned into the hunted. Their own customs and technologies turned against them. We add them all throughout their hunt. Networks that let all seas in the AS their invincible hunters. Galaxy watches. I thought the message was a blatant mess with humanity, and we won't simply defend ourselves. We'll make you lose your own game, defeat you at it, and force you to observe as your entire perspective collapses. By dawn, the greatest hunt in history was ended. The history of KRA had come to an end, with their total failure as I stood surrounded by the resistance fighters who are still alive and observing. Someone asked me this morning if I assumed they would learn their lesson. If they haven't figured it out, they laughed, honey. We'll merely need to continue teaching. By now, I did in fact pick up one of their throws onto Vexta Neura trackers. Humans are Thor's corpse. ... Excellent educators, and we're even superior hunters. You would anticipate observing how his whole hunting party is... Thor would methodically dismantle a vexed group of aliens. Thor would methodically disinvest himself of his own soul and passion and horror and humility, but not lose till it's much too late. He growled, throwing away his broken weapons hand to hand, predator to prey. I grinned. The first wise move I made was to drop my own gear throughout the day. You've stated that you have. We circled each one of your labels backward other. On board his trophy chamber, around us the command ship is preserved. His victims' heads observed. You think the human alien, every species that was involved in the fatal error of being inferior to the powerful, you think you've won, he said. Laughing, that sound of the garbage disposal that you know so well now racked with agony. Even if I die, thousands more hunters will be there. Never. Stop, I said, evading. That's funny. His initial swing, which is precisely what the saber-toothed tigers sprang from. Every peak of the cave bears and wolves predators who believed they were humans discovered that his robotic arm had been slashed out more quickly than any organic activity, but I had researched those improvements during my time undercover and was aware of their tendencies. Their shortcomings, more significantly, I was aware of their weakness. They were unable to adjust mid-strike, so I slipped inside his defenses with methods developed by human fighters over countless years, but the sea were relaxing on top of their meal. Shame. We were creating strategies for turning a larger, more powerful opponent. You don't comprehend anything when you're against them, bellowed, sweeping the air with his claws where I was a moment earlier, and we are the last hunters. No. I slammed my elbow into a group of nerves I'd discovered while I was studying demon caverns. You are only humanity as it exists today. This game has been played by us since we lived in caverns. And his subsequent blow missed the mark when his robotic arm malfunctioned. I utilized his momentum in the face of a straightforward judo toss that caused him to collide with his preserved heads on the priceless trophy wall. You want to know why it rained down all around him? I inquired about the true difference between us, keeping his distance since he found it difficult to ascend. You seek out sports for pride, trophy. Humanity discovered how to hunt as extinction was the alternative. Each method we created, the weapon we developed, originated from desperate. Now he lunged once more. I took a stride and seized one of the skull of fallen trophies as first humans, murdered the person he boasted about. When I was infiltrating, the bone cracked. Opposed to cybernetic enhancement was profoundly gratifying. The aspect of being hunted that I kept observing him stumble is that it gives you all the knowledge you need to be a predator. As you were enjoying your innate superiority to us, gaining knowledge and adjusting, his cybernetic eye was developing. The aiming display is currently broken. Frightening. Where are you and what are you doing? Occurs when the prey determines that enough is sufficient. Where what occurs when the hunters observe the hunters and believe that we can do better than that last blow. Wasn't ostentatious, but rather clearly focused. Hit at the intersection of organic augmentation of tissue and cybernetics. The fragility that I had observed throughout all those intriguing technical conversations. As Vex, his scales faded as his thoughts crashed. I crouched next to him in the gray of death. Is the cosmic joke's punchline? You were wrong to believe that humanity was the prey sim. Simply put, we were better plays. The role compared to how well you played, I stood as the predator. Looking around the chamber, of each of the fallen trophies symbolized a sacrifice for the sake of sport and pride for the straightforward enjoyment of superiority. I muttered to the empty room. Game over. I then turned on the broadcast I had scheduled sending to each the Thule Sooner hunting lodge in the galaxy's focus. The humanity of all hunters is formally altering the engagement guidelines from "we're not playing the prey." And believe me, you don't want to observe how we act like predators due to the fact that we have millions of years of experience at both.